Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world. Even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado and Kansas, Georgia, in Missouri, Texas, Chicago, Illinois, in Arkansas, in California, in Pennsylvania, in Canada, New York, Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, Africa, Kenya, Pakistan, Zambia, to the United Kingdom, to our brethren in Australia, and also to our brethren in Malaysia. And to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad, greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our special episode number 26, as the last final warning message just prior to the close of provision. I would like to read this reading, number 4. It says, "The only way to understand difficult passages of the Bible is to hold fast to certain firmly established principles." So, that is the admonition given by inspiration, that in order for us to understand difficult passages or difficult subject, we need to hold fast to certain firmly established principles. Now, the first principle that we need to establish is that the grammatical rule. Here and Old Symbolic Code. So that is the first principle that we need to establish. The grammatical rule. Here in 2 Symbolic Code, 7 and 8, page 10. 2 Symbolic Code, number 7 and 8, page 10. It says, "Hence, as there are no useless words in either of the writings, those who desire to know the truth must carefully mark every word. Otherwise, they will never comprehend the truth, and as a consequence, they will be driven by the winds as the waves of the sea. Until the winds cease blowing, probation closes, and they be left to sink down in their sins, as do the waves in the sea." So, that is the first divine principle that we need to carefully mark every word. Or in other words, let us strictly observe the grammatical rule. It says in 2SR page 118, "This grammatical rule is followed in the scriptures, and it is one way to recognize present truth." So, grammatical rule is one way to recognize present truth. And I would like to read again the statement in 3 Symbolic Code number 7, page 4. 3 Symbolic Code number 7, page 4. You yourself know that such scaleless and thoughtless interpretations, which pay no attention to language, and which obey neither rule nor logic, are not inspired, but are private, and thus inevitably false. So we need to pay attention to the language use and apply strictly the grammatical rule. And 1 SR 244, it says, it is wonderful to note the inspiration of the scriptures. Perfect they are when their appointed time is come. Only at such an occasion are the scriptures grammatically correct. And the second divine principles is that we should not base our conclusion only upon one single citation. So here in 3 Symbolic Code number 1, page 9, 3 Symbolic Code number 1, page 9, a conclusion which is based upon a single citation, though the passage be ever so plain, but which conclusion cannot be harmonized with every other authoritative statement on the same subject, is not a safe and honest rule of interpretation. So, in other words, according to answerer number 3, page 41, it says, let us remember always to observe the inviolable rule that an interpretation of one inspired statement must harmonize with all other related statements. So when we study the Shepherd's Rod publications, we need to harmonize the entire Shepherd's Rod publications. And of course, our interpretation must be in perfect harmony, because the statement here on the Old Symbolic Code, 3 Symbolic Code number 1, page 9, 3 Symbolic Code number 1, page 9, it says, if we cannot harmonize any one particular statement with the foregoing facts, we would then be better off to be out of harmony with the one than to disregard all the other statements, none of which we can controvert. 3 Symbolic Code number 1, page 9. So if we cannot harmonize any one particular statement with the foregoing facts, we would then be better off to be out of harmony with the one than to disregard all the other statements, none of which we can controvert. So, or in other words, according to this statement on 1 Symbolic Code number 10, page 8, it says, 1 Symbolic Code number 10, page 8, but would rather seek to make his final analysis, but would rather seek to make his final analysis in such a way as to be in perfect harmony with all inspired writings, or else confess that he does not have the light on the scriptures, So this is the divine principle. It says that we will make our final analysis in such a way as to be in perfect harmony with all inspired writings. One symbolic code, number 10, on page 8. And the third divine principle, I would like to read track number 8 on page 5. Track number 8, page 5. It says, so, correctly to understand this prophetic event in its entirety, we must carefully differentiate the part which takes place in heaven from the part which takes place on earth. So that is also very important, brothers and sisters, so that to arrive the subject on its entirety, then we need to carefully differentiate the occurrence that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary and the occurrence that takes place on the earth. And the fourth one is that the fourth divine principle, let us distinctly separate the proceedings in the holy place and the proceedings in the most holy place, because that is one of the reasons why many who study the shepherd's rod, they had not been able to grasp the true meaning of the Word of God, because they mix up the proceedings in the holy place and the proceedings in the most holy place. Now, for example, the term judicial session or judgment in session, that term is applied only to the most holy place. Now, I would like to read the statement here in 2SR. It says here, 199. The arrangement and the scene, as described by John, proves that it is the judgment in session, for it is held in the Holy of Holies. So if it is held in the Holy of Holies, that is called the judgment in session or judicial session. But if the proceedings is held in the holy place, that is judicial sitting. So let us distinctly separate the term judicial session and the term judicial sitting. Remember, the shepherd's rod plainly told us here in track number 15, page 76, it says, no inspiration would not thus confuse its terms and still expect us to comprehend its teachings, to know how to interpret its symbols, and when to expect the actual events to take place. So, we need to ever remember that no inspiration would not confuse its terms. Because if the terms used is confusing, then how could we be able to arrive into the truth? So there must be specific terms. brothers and sisters. And that is why we need to establish divine principle. Now, since we already proven with absolute fact that grammatical rule is very important, so we need to observe the preposition of and preposition for judgment of the dead. So the preposition used is of, and that proceedings is in the most holy place. But if the preposition used is for judgment for the dead, that proceeding is in the holy place. So we should not mix up the preposition for and the preposition of, right? So that is very important, brothers and sisters. We need to understand the preposition used by inspiration, because inspiration would not confuse us the term. When it says judgment for the dead, that is in the holy place. Now, what is the specific proceedings in the holy place? Blotting out of names. So, that is the focal point, the specific work in the holy place. And in order for us not to be confused, God separated the preposition. The preposition used in the holy place is judgment for the dead. Now, for example, here in timely greetings, and 1 TG number 11, page 10. 1 TG number 11, page 10. It says, to continue preaching the additional light, the judgment for the dead, the cleansing of the sanctuary, Daniel 8:14, the purification of it by blotting out from the books the names of those who are found not eligible to come up in the first resurrection, the resurrection of the holy ones, Revelation 20, verse 5 and 6. 1 TG 11:10. So here it is very plain. The preposition used is judgment for the dead. And what is the proceedings? Blotting out of names. It says, by blotting out from the books the names of those who are found not eligible to come up in the first resurrection, the resurrection of the just, and the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. So, that is in the holy place. Now, although we explained it several times, but I think it is even more necessary to go back to basic. So, to repeat again, let us distinctly separate judgment for the dead, because that is blotting out of names, and that proceedings is in the holy place. But if you will say judgment of the dead, that is in the most holy place. And the only proceedings in the most holy place is blotting out of sins and granting of rewards. So let's read 2SR. 2SR page. Let's read a statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. 189. During Christ's ministration in the holiest of all, which is a throne of judgment, of blotting out sins and granting of rewards. So that is the only proceedings in the most holy place. Blotting out of sins, and then the second one is granting of rewards. Do not forget that all the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary are purely bookwork transaction, according to White House Recruiter, page 20. And that is the focal point of the judgment, the books, according to track number 3, page 6. So when we will be talking about blotting out of sins, that is called the beginning work of the judgment of the dead. So if we could read the statement, beginning work of the judgment of the dead, that proceedings is in the most holy place, and that is blotting out of sins. But if we could read the statement, I hope that everybody is jotting it down, all the divine principles. And if you could read the statement, the closing work of the judgment of the dead, that is the granting of rewards. What does it mean by granting of rewards? To inscribe the names of those righteous by which their sins had been blotted out. After their sins had been blotted out, their names will be inscribed into the book of resurrection. And there are only 3 resurrection recorded in the Bible. The resurrection to the second visible coming of Jesus Christ, and Daniel 12:2 and Ezekiel 37. So these 3 resurrections, their judicial proceedings had been separated because God is a God of order. He is not the author of confusion. So that is also another thing that we need to observe, because the judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary is clustered by resurrection. First, the proceedings to those who will be resurrected at the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. And the second proceedings is those who will be resurrected on Ezekiel 37. And the last proceedings is those will be resurrected on Daniel 12. And in the divine principle in Matthew 20, it will be reverse order. The last will be the one to be resurrected first. So it will be reversed. The first to be resurrected must be Daniel 12, then Ezekiel 37, and then the resurrection at the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. So the arrangement in the proceeding is divided, talking about first that pertains to the dead. So the proceedings that pertains to the dead is first those who will be resurrected at the second visible coming of Jesus Christ, and then the second proceedings must be those who will be resurrected at Ezekiel 37, and the third proceeding is those who will be resurrected on Daniel 12, verse 2. But in the resurrection, the last is the one, is the first to be resurrected. It will be reversed. Daniel 12, Ezekiel 37, and then second visible coming of Jesus Christ. Now, the proceedings that pertains to the dead is also very complicated, or in other words, extra care must be exercised so that we will not be confused. But it is even more complicated, brothers and sisters. Although it is not complicated, but I'm just saying the word complicated, meaning we need to exercise extra care so that we will not mix up the proceedings that pertains to the living, which is pertaining to you and I, the candidates to be translated to heaven without seeing death. Now, we already read, right, in 2SR 187, saying, in the sanctuary construction and service is revealed the plan of salvation. So, the cleansing of the sanctuary is divided into two. First, the cleansing of the sanctuary itself. And second, the cleansing of the books. And that is why it says, in the sanctuary construction and service is revealed the plan of salvation. So, hoping, brethren, that we understand. So, to repeat again, let us distinctly separate the cleansing of the sanctuary, which pertains to the sanctuary itself, and the cleansing of the sanctuary, which pertains to the books, because they are distinct and separate work. Now let us go first to the cleansing of the sanctuary. So let us go first to the cleansing of the sanctuary. So, I would like to read TG. So, let us read 2TG number 14 on 2TG number 12 on page 24. Okay? It says, chapters 4 and 5, we see, contain a scene of a special event which caused the book to be unsealed. That which came out of the book is, in the fullest sense, the revelation of Jesus Christ, of the one who only was worthy to open the book. So, what is that thing that caused the book to be unsealed? The special event. So, without that special event, the book cannot be opened. According to that reading in 2TG 12:24, saying that chapters 4 and 5, we see, contain a scene of a special event, which cause, so that is the causes, why the book to be unsealed. And the book cannot be unsealed not until that special event. Now, so let us read now track number 5. Track number 5 on page 102. It says, by that time, it was understood that the statement, the sanctuary shall be cleansed, did not mean that Christ was to cleanse the earth in 1844, but rather that in fulfillment of Daniel 7 verse 9 and 10, he was to cleanse the heavenly sanctuary. This is the very event which opened the seals and sounded the trumpets, and which, as we have seen, John was told would be hereafter. So what is that special event, the very event which opened the seals? The cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary. So it points out to the sanctuary itself. The sanctuary itself must be cleansed. Why? Why is it that the sanctuary itself must be cleansed before the book to be unsealed? What is the main reason? What is the special reason? Why is it that the sanctuary must be cleansed first? Now, I would like to write again, and hoping that you will copy this one so that I will no longer write. Third heaven. So, before October 22, 1844, the sanctuary in the third heaven is divided into two, divided by this veil, holy place and most holy place. All the books are placed in the holy place. Now, according to the shepherd's rod in 2 SR 215, when the veil will be lifted, the entire sanctuary will become most holy. So when the entire sanctuary will become most holy, the sea of glass, clear as crystal, which came out from the throne of God the Father, will surround the entire sanctuary. Now, there are two prominent things that I would like to explain. That before the veil had been lifted, all the books here in the third heaven, it was transferred to the second heaven. So that's what it means that the sanctuary had been cleansed. Because the focal point is the books. So all the books was transferred to the holy place. And there are 64 books brought down to the holy place, which is the second heaven. So the only books that had been left in the third heaven when the veil was lifted is the Lamb's Book of Life, sealed with 7 seals. That is the book of Jesus Christ. And the Book of Life, sealed with 7 seals, which is the book of God the Father. So there are only 2 books that had been remained in October 22, 1844. Now, why is it that the books need to be transferred to the holy place? Because when the veil will be lifted and the sea of glass, clear as crystal, that came from the throne of God the Father will surround the entire sanctuary, then all the names by which they will be surrounded by the sea of glass will be immortalized. Then all the wicked, together with the fallen angels, will live eternally. Because their names had been left in the most holy place, when the entire most holy place were already surrounded by the sea of glass, clear as crystal. And the second one is that the divine principle in 2 SR 184, the only names to be brought into the presence of God the Father in the most holy place are the names of the righteous. Because only the righteous will be granted immortality. Now, if all the books remain in the third heaven after the veil was lifted, then how could it be that such divine decree that only the names of the righteous will be brought into the most holy place, while in reality, all the books were already there when the veil was lifted? So, it could not be, brothers and sisters, right? Because it says in 2 SR 184, the seal is the permit to enter into the most holy place. And the seal of the living God cannot be placed to the wicked. So, now, let us go to, and that was in October 22, 1844. So, in October 22, October 22, 1844, the sanctuary in the third heaven is cleansed. So, the inter-sanctuary become most holy place. So, the inter-sanctuary is cleansed. So, the only one that will be brought into the most holy place, because it is already cleansed, are those people that had been cleansed in the holy place, in the second heaven. So, October 22, 1844, the third heaven, the most holy place, is already cleansed. So, the second heaven, which is the holy place, in October 22, 1844, so this is the place by which the cleansing occurred. The most holy place is already cleansed. And the names to be brought into the most holy place are those names that had been able to survive the investigation in the holy place. So, March 27, I would like to go directly. March 27, 2021. The one that had been cleansed is the sanctuary itself, the holy place in the second heaven. So all the books by which there are names of the wicked is transferred to the first heaven. So the books that had been left in the holy place are those books that were already cleansed. The book represented by the first seal, second seal, third seal, fourth seal, fifth seal, sixth seal, and the seventh seal. So, this last book is very important that we need to study, because this is the most broadest book of all the books that pertains to the living. The same with this book, the sixth seal, is also very broad, because this is the book by which there are saints that have been judged while living and are destined to die. So, these two books, the sixth seal and the seventh seal, is very important to the people who must know that their cases are on trial. And we know that that is the 144,000. The 144,000 living saints. That is why here in 2TG number 12, I would like to read 2TG number 12. On page 30, it says, whereas the last two seals, which contain the things that pertain to the judgment of the living, to the people who must know that their cases are on trial, are quiet long. So it says to the people who must know that their cases are on trial, it's very important to them that they will understand the last two seals. What is the last two seals? The sixth seal and the seventh seal. Why is it that they need to completely understand the sixth seal? Because I think it utters the impossibility that you could understand the seventh seal if you cannot understand the sixth seal. because the sixth seal involves the seventh seal. Now, we will no longer focus our attention to the saints by which at the time when their cases are on trial, they were already dead, lying unconscious in their graves. But rather, we will focus our attention to the last two seals, but pertaining to, first, to the saint by which their cases are on trial while they were yet alive. So that is very important, right, brothers and sisters? And hoping that God would help us in this very important subject. Now, I would like to read to you this statement. In 2SR 217, and I would like to make it very slow, or make it slowly, so that we could be able to grasp the true meaning of this statement, to harmonize the entire Shepherd's Rod publications. Now, I would like to read 2SR 217. It says, "They who are to be sealed at that time were seen by John as a great multitude with palms in their hands." Then it says, see Revelation 7 verse 9. "Hence the scroll has made a turn, and the sealing for those who shall be judged while living has begun." Now, let us focus to the statement, "Hence the scroll has made a turn, and the sealing for those who shall be judged while living has begun." No, it cannot be in the days of Beti Hotep. The statement is pointing to that predicted event when the scroll has made a turn. At that time, the sealing for those who shall be judged while living has begun. Or in other words, let us put in this way, when the sealing for those who shall be judged while living has begun, and we know that that is in the heavenly sanctuary. But the scroll, saying the scroll has made a turn, that is on the earth. So to repeat again, that statement is easy to understand. That when the sealing, that is in the heavenly sanctuary, when the sealing for those who shall be judged while living is in progress or commencing, has begun, that is also the time by which the scroll has made a turn, the unrolling of the scroll. Now, the question is that, what sealing mentioned there by which those who shall be judged while living has begun? Is it the sealing in the holy place, or is it the sealing in the most holy place? So when we study the Shepherd's Rod, we need to be very careful. Line upon line, precept upon precept, subject upon subject. Or in other words, that statement on the great controversy saying, careless reader. We should not be careless reader. I remember that statement on the great controversy, saying, let me read to you. It says, introduction, page 8. It says, and as several writers present a subject under varied aspects and relations, there may appear to the superficial, careless, or prejudiced reader to be discrepancy or contradiction, where the thoughtful, reverent student with clearer insight discerns the underlying harmony. So, hoping that we are among the thoughtful and reverent student with clearer insight, we can discern the underlying perfect harmony of the words of inspiration. Now, here's another thing that we need to consider. The prophet himself admonishes us. Here in 7 Symbolic Code 7 to 12, page 19. 7 Symbolic Code 7 to 12, page 19. It says, we have learned much, and no doubt there is much more for us to learn. It is the follow-on and the go-through spirit that will finally land the remnant without fault on the heavenly Mount Zion. My conclusion is that we should give up no scripture truth, but that our false applications and interpretations of scripture and consequent false ideas of order and propriety should be given up as fast as possible. The Review and Herald, May 29, 1860. So both Sister White and B.T. Hotep gave an admonition that whatever false expectation of the prophet, we need to give it up. Because in Ezekiel chapter 4, it was represented by cow's dung. God allowed cow's dung for the sake of the prophet or for the good of the prophet. And that cow's dung is the false expectation of the prophet. So here in 1 SR 124, the prophet was told that he could not use wood or coal to bake the cakes upon, but that he should use dung that cometh out of a man. To Ezekiel, it was too repulsive, and he pleaded to be excused. The Lord made an allowance, not by compulsion, but for Ezekiel's sake only, by telling Ezekiel to bake it with cow's dung. And we explained it several times that in the ceremonial service, cow's dung is included, right? Numbers 19:5, Leviticus 16 verse 27, Leviticus 8:17, Leviticus 4 verse 11, and also Exodus 29 verse 14. So what does it mean? For Ezekiel's sake only. Meaning, it is for the good of the prophet, for his own good. Because through that false expectation, it leads them to serve the Lord more fully. For example, Sister White, she thought that the sealing of the 144,000 living saints was in progress in her lifetime. Therefore, she and all her associates jealously preached the gospel with the goal to gather the 144,000 living saints, according to track number 5, right? 102. So that false expectation lead them to serve God more fully. The same with B.T. Hotep. B.T. Hotep thought that the sealing of the 144,000 occurred in his lifetime. And he and all his associates jealously sigh and cry for all the abomination in the church in order to be a part of that special company, 144,000 saints, which no longer to taste death. And we know that that is represented by cow's dung, the false expectation of the prophet. So, we need to distinctly separate the cow's dung and the scriptural truth. The false expectation of the prophet and the scriptural truth. Now here, the best example that I could give is the statement in 2SR 162. So let us read. 2SR 162. The cases of all who are sealed from 1929 to the final close of provision will be investigated before the throne in the heavenly sanctuary while living. Now, brothers and sisters, this is one of the false expectation of the prophet, saying 1929, all of them will be investigated before the throne in the heavenly sanctuary while living, and it could no longer reality today because they were dead. And the statement used is all. And it says, the investigation commences after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. Now, when they will be investigated while living, after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9, it says, the investigation commences after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. Then it says, those who are sealed from 1929 to the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9, close of provision for the church, are living saints, 144,000 in number, who shall never die, translated without tasting death. Now let us now distinctly separate the scriptural truth and the false expectation of the prophet. In this reading in 2SR 162, we need to give up the false expectation of the prophet. What is the false expectation of the prophet? In that reading, he expected that the sealing of the 144,000 commenced in 1929. And the word used by inspiration is all. Not some, but all. So, in this reading, what is the scriptural truth that we need not to give up? That the word all is pointing to the 144,000 living saints. Now, let us read again the statement. The cases of all who are sealed from 1929 to the final close of provision will be investigated before the throne in the heavenly sanctuary while living. And when would be the investigation? The investigation commences after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. Now, the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9 was still future in the days of B.T. Hotep. And majority of them, almost all of them were already dead. Now, how could they be investigated in the heavenly sanctuary while living, by which such investigation is after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9, while in reality, all of them, with very few exceptions today, very minority that were still alive. Almost all of them lying unconscious in their graves. Then there is no more possibility that they could be judged while living, because they were already dead. Second, brothers and sisters, the word while in grammatical rule indicates limitation of time. You cannot use that statement to the saints that will no longer to taste death. You will say while living, while in reality they will no longer to taste death. That is only pointing to those who are judged while living but destined to die. Now, I would like to read the statement here in tract number 9, page 10. The words while the earth remaineth expressly denoting limitation of time. So the word while expressly denoting limitation of time while living, because they will die. So the statement while living cannot be applied to the saints that will no longer to taste death. So they are the people who will be judged. So the statement in 2SR 162 and 2SR 217 is pointing to the same event. Judged while living. And here in tract number 3, on page 20, it says, let's read tract number 3, page 20. Plainly, therefore, the judgment is to begin and the sanctuary to be cleansed, not before, but after the fulfillment of the period for those appointed to die. So that statement, appointed to die, again, cannot be applied to the saints that will no longer to taste death. Because the statement, appointed to die, there are those that have been judged while living. Then after their judgment, their cases were already finished in the heavenly sanctuary. They were destined to die. They were appointed to die. And that is the last constituent of Isaiah 57:1 and the last constituent of Revelation 14:13. So, let us go back again to the sixth seal, which is represented by the altar. According to tract number 5, page 110. The altar is divided into two classes. Isaiah 57:1 and Revelation 14:13. So, I would like to repeat again. And hope that God would help me to explain this subject. Altar. Altar is divided into two classes. Isaiah 57:1 and Revelation 14:13. But both of them is divided into two. So, Isaiah 57:1 divided into two. First, judged in the heavenly sanctuary judged in the heavenly sanctuary while lying unconscious in their grave. So that is the first one. Judged in the heavenly sanctuary while lying unconscious in their graves, meaning they were already dead. And second, Isaiah 57:1, those who are judged while living. The same principle with Revelation 14:13. Revelation 14:13. Judged in the heavenly sanctuary while lying unconscious in their graves. And the second one is judged in the heavenly sanctuary while living. So, hoping that we could gradually grasp the entire proceeding in the heavenly sanctuary. Now, I would like to go back again to 2SR 162. So, let's read again 2SR page 162. It says, the cases of all who are sealed from 1929 to the final close of provision will be investigated before the throne in the heavenly sanctuary while living. Then it says, the investigation commences after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. So in this paragraph, the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9 is very important. Because after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9, that is the time when this group of people who are destined to die, they will be judged while living. When? After the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. Now, it's easy, brothers and sisters, to gradually decipher. Now, for example, this is the fulfillment. The fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. So the word after, it must be after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. So let us distinctly separate the period which is the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. Then it says, when would be those who are destined to die, that they will be judged in the heavenly sanctuary while living? It says, after. Not during the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. It says, after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. So that is very plain. Now, in order for us to understand it completely, we need now to link our subject concerning the Great Tribulation, the time of trouble, or the time of trouble is divided into two. Little time of trouble and great time of trouble. So these three prominent events is very important. And it seems that the Great Tribulation on Matthew 24 is the type Matthew 24. Let us read Matthew 24 on verse 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. We know that this great tribulation occurred on the dark ages. But without any doubts, that is the type of the great tribulation in Revelation chapter 7. Now let us read Revelation chapter 7, verse 14. And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed their robes, and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Revelation 7, verse 14. So without any doubt, the great tribulation in Revelation 7, verse 14 are still future. Now, brothers and sisters, let us link first to the exceeding great horn. The exceeding great horn is divided into three periods: pagan, papal, and Protestant period. And within these three periods, the saints had been trodden underfoot. Now, what is the treading of the host? Let us read tract number 3, page 39. It says, the treading of the host is the massacring of the Christians who would not worship according to the dictates of the horn power. The horn power, we know that that is the exceeding great horn. What is the treading of the host? Massacring of the Christians, or in other words, martyrdom. The martyrdom during pagan Rome, the martyrdom during papal Rome, and the martyrdom under 666. Now, let us read 2SR 151. It says, 2SR 151. The spirit of prophecy also states that the king of the north brought to view in Daniel 11:45 and the two horn beast of Revelation 13 is the same power, and that it shall bear this mystical number 666. So, that number 666 is mystical according to this reading. But we will show to you the mystery of that number 666. Because it points out to the 45th and the 46th President of the United States of America. Now it says, we quote, this power is the last that treads down the true church of God. And of course, the true church must be pointing to the true followers of Jesus Christ. So, we already read what is the treading of the host, massacring of the Christians. Now let us read the statement in the vision of the prophet here on 3SM. So let's read 3SM on page 300. So let's read the statement. Here the prophet is plainly telling us that there are many who will be martyred for their faith. 398. 3 SM. Persecution in the battle before the last closing conflict. The two armies will stand distinct and separate, and this distinction will be so marked that many who shall be convinced of the truth will come on the side of God's commandment-keeping people. When this grand work is to take place in the battle prior to the last closing conflict, many will be imprisoned, many will flee for their lives from cities and towns, and many will be martyrs for Christ's sake in standing in defense of the truth. So there will be many martyrs. And who are they? That is Revelation 14:13. They are those who will die during the Great Tribulation. Typifying the Great Tribulation during the Dark Ages. Right? Brothers and sisters. So, that verse in Revelation chapter 6 and verse 9, it says, Revelation chapter 6 verse 9, and when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. So, the three martyrdoms on the three periods of the exceeding great horn, pagan, papal, and the Protestant period, which is during the mark of the beast system, is divided into three classes. Those who died under, those who have been martyred for their faith during the period of pagan Rome, they are called the souls under the altar. And those who died during the Dark Ages, they are the fellow servants. But those will be martyred for their faith during the Great Tribulation, when the mark of the beast system will be implemented, is called their brethren. So we have souls under the altar, fellow servants, and their brethren. So, that statement on 2SR page 100, 2SR page 173, it says, Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yes, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Revelation 14:13. Which die from henceforth. That is from the commencement of the loud cry. Thus the word declares that some of the saints will be laid in the grave even during the time of the harvest, the loud cry, or the loud cry to the great multitude. We quote from Counsels on Health, page 375. Many will be laid away to sleep before the fiery ordeal of the time of trouble shall come upon the world. So what is the difference between the Great Tribulation and the time of trouble? The difference is that during the Great Tribulation, there are still saints to die. But during the time of trouble, there will be no more saint to die. The only saint that remain in the period of the little time of trouble are the living saints. The saints that will no longer to taste death. So the same here in 1SR page 219. Let us read. It says, 1SR 219. It says, and I heard a voice from heaven, 1SR 219. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, write, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Note that after the sealing of the 144,000, there would be some who would die in the Lord saved. For the scripture reads, from henceforth, meaning from the time this company was sealed. So that is very plain. When they will die after the 144,000 was sealed. And in the next paragraph, it says, those who cannot undergo the trial are laid in their graves. The trial mentioned here, we already read, right? In 2SR 173. The fiery ordeal of the time of trouble. Those who cannot undergo the trial are laid in their graves, while 144,000 remain and will escape. But the balance in the church now, so the word now, it is pointing to the little time of trouble, applied to the little time of trouble, shall perish in the ruin. May God help His people. Or in other words, at the commencement of the time of trouble, there will be only two classes of Sabbath keepers that will remain. Living saints and living wicked. There will be no more saints to be laid down to sleep because all of them had been laid down by God to sleep before the fiery ordeal of the time of trouble. So hoping that we are clear that portion that during the Great Tribulation, there are still saints to die. And who are they? They are those constituent of Revelation 14:13, by which their cases in the heavenly sanctuary had been considered. They had been judged while they were still alive. And they were destined to die. When? During the Great Tribulation. That is the time that they will die. During the Great Tribulation. So all of them who died prior to the Great Tribulation, they are under Isaiah 57:1. By which some of them also had been judged in the heavenly sanctuary while living. But the fact is that they died prior to the evil time, because that is the statement in Isaiah 57:1. And that evil time is the Great Tribulation. Whereas Revelation 14:13, they will die during the period of the Great Tribulation, just prior to the commencement of the little time of trouble. Because at the commencement of the little time of trouble, the only saint that will ever remain are those saints that will no longer to taste death. Now, let us ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. I would like to do we have the diagram? Mr. Orlin told me we have the diagram of space there. Great Tribulation, little time of trouble, and great time of trouble. And with loud cry. So, let us show to you the little illustration. Now, there are 4 periods of time which is called the loud cry. First, loud cry, which is the sealing of the 144,000. That is the loud cry prior to the Great Tribulation. And the second loud cry is during the Great Tribulation. And that is to all Sabbath keepers, not under the banner of the third angel's message. And the third loud cry is during the little time of trouble. That is addressed to all Sunday-keeping Christians. And the last and the final loud cry during the great time of trouble is to all non-Christians or to all humanity. So that are the 4 periods called the loud cry proclamation. And it's very important so that we should not mix up the one event to the other. Now, during the little time of trouble, at that time, the 144,000 did not as yet reach Mount Zion or the premillennial kingdom. Now, I would like to repeat again. During the Great Tribulation, during the little time of trouble, the saints at that time, the 144,000 living saints, did not as yet reach Mount Zion, or we call the premillennial, the literal, physical premillennial kingdom. They will be delivered at midnight after the little time of trouble. So their deliverance is the dividing line of the little time of trouble and the great time of trouble. Now, I would like to emphasize another portion. During the Great Tribulation, what is the difference? In the little time of trouble, Jesus Christ is in the heavenly sanctuary. But during the Great Tribulation, Jesus Christ is on the earth. So, it is very important to understand the work of Jesus Christ. Now, I would like to illustrate first. Jesus Christ will visit the earth. What is His mission? To harvest the 144,000, because He is the one to harvest the 144,000. To harvest the 144,000. Or to seal the 144,000. And Jesus Christ will remain to this earth even during the Great Tribulation. When Jesus Christ will return to heaven, to the third heaven, that is the commencement of the little time of trouble. Jesus Christ is in the heavenly sanctuary. Little time of trouble. Now, when Jesus Christ will descend to the earth to deliver the 144,000, that is the end part of the little time of trouble. And we know that there are 7 days slaughtering. This 7 days slaughtering is the slaughtering of all the wicked Sabbath keepers throughout the whole world. And after 7 days, Jesus Christ will return again to the most holy place. Then, that is the commencement of the great time of trouble. So, that is the difference. In the Great Tribulation, Jesus Christ is on the earth. But in the little time of trouble, Jesus Christ is in the heavenly sanctuary. When Jesus Christ will be on the earth during these 7 days, this is called the 7 days slaughtering, the half-hour silence. And this is also the deliverance of the 144,000 living saints brought to Mount Zion, the physical, literal premillennial kingdom. And then after 7 days, he will return to the heavenly sanctuary, then commence the great time of trouble. So, by gradually illustrating those events, I think it will be even more easier for us to comprehend this very important subject. Now, one of the, for me, very precious truths is the half-hour silence, by which many shepherds not believer, there is only one half-hour silence which is commonly understood by them. So, it is very important now to study, is there only one half-hour silence? Then we need to study the shepherd's rod. Now, I would like to read to you 12 symbolic code. 12 symbolic code. I think number 3. 12 symbolic code number 3, page 19. Let us study closely every paragraph because it is a life and death matter. 12 symbolic code number 3, page 19. It says, thus it is seen that the time of the sanctuary judgment among the living firstfruits starts at the time of the slaughter and continues thereafter during the time of the second fruits. I would like to read again. It says, thus it is seen that the time of the sanctuary judgment, of course that is pointing to the heavenly sanctuary. Thus it is seen that the time of the sanctuary judgment among the living firstfruits starts at the time of the slaughter and continues thereafter during the time of the second fruits. The only thing by which many shepherds not believer had not been able to grasp the true meaning of the statement, it's so because they have no complete understanding concerning the sanctuary judgment. Now first, what sanctuary judgment mentioned in that reading? Is it the sanctuary judgment in the most holy place? Or is it the sanctuary judgment in the third heaven? Is it the sanctuary judgment in the second heaven? Or is it the sanctuary judgment in the first heaven? That is the reason why they mix up, brothers and sisters. And The only reason is that I would like to read this reading in the old symbolic code, the statement used by the shepherd's rod. It says, one symbolic code number 4, page 5. The trouble does not lie in the statement themselves, but rather in man's limited knowledge of the truth therein. So I would like to read again. 1 symbolic code number 4, page 5. The trouble does not lie in the statement themselves, but rather in man's limited knowledge of the truth therein. So, that is why I read those passages that in studying the Shepherd's Rod publications, we need to harmonize all other related statements. We should not jump immediately any conclusion by reading only one single citation. And as a result, our understanding contradicts the other statement. Now, let us read 12 symbolic code 3, page 19, the next paragraph. It says, in our conversation, so this is the explanation of the first paragraph that we read. In our conversation, I meant to explain that we are not in the sanctuary judgment of the living, not in the time for our sins to be blotted out. So what sanctuary judgment mentioned here? The blotting out of sins. It says, but in the time for us to decide, judge ourselves either to receive the mark and be saved, or to remain without it and be taken by the slaughter weapons of the angels, we are not in the seventh seal. The half-hour silence is yet future. What half-hour silence mentioned here? 100% all the half-hour silence in the days of beauty health of us is still future. But we will prove to you that there are more than one half-hour silence. But first of all, it was already answered by B.T. Hotep. What judgment, sanctuary judgment mentioned here? Judgment of the living. You see, judgment of the living. What is judgment of the living? Blotting out of sins. Now let us read. Tract number 3, 1934 edition. On page 75. Tract number 3, 1934 edition, page 75. Let me read to you. It says, the typical wave lobes, which signify the completion of the first fruit harvest, Leviticus 23 verse 17, were baken with leaven to symbolize that the sins were not blotted out at the time the servants of our God were sealed. Hence, the investigative judgment for the living, blotting out the sins, will begin after the sealing of the 144,000, the spiritual wave lobes, and after the outpouring of the Spirit, the leaven may have a still deeper meaning. Now, the voice of inspiration made it so plain, brothers and sisters, that the blotting out of sins, the sins of the 144,000, will be blotted out after they receive the Pentecostal power. After the 144,000 were completely sealed. Perfectly corroborating to the statement in 12 Symbolic Code 3, page 19, that blotting out of sins, the judgment in the sanctuary in heaven takes place after the slaughtering. Now let us take just little view concerning the subject, the slaughtering. So I would like to read the old symbolic code. 3 symbolic code, number 1, page 8. Therefore, as there are 2 separations, there is a double fulfillment of Ezekiel's slaughter. One in the church before the close of provision, and the other in the worldly churches after the close of provision, when everyone has made his decision. 3 symbolic code, number 1, page 8. Now, the statement is very plain. There are 2 slaughtering. Slaughtering has a double fulfillment. The first slaughtering is prior to the close of provision. And the second slaughtering is after the close of provision. And of course, we will focus first to the slaughtering prior to the close of provision. What close of provision mentioned there? For sure, it is not the close of provision in the spiritual Israel, because the slaughtering will occur after the sealing of the 144,000. And when the 144,000 is completely sealed, that is close of provision to spiritual Israel. So the close of provision mentioned there is the close of provision for all Sabbath keepers. So, the first slaughtering is the slaughtering prior to the close of provision to all Sabbath keepers. And the second slaughtering is after the close of provision of all Sabbath keepers. So, there are 2 slaughtering. And for sure, the slaughtering mentioned in 12 symbolic code 3:19 must be the first slaughtering. Because after that slaughtering, the sins of the 144,000 will be blotted out. So it's easy to understand, brothers and sisters. Now, for example, this is the Pentecost. Pentecost, the outpouring of the Pentecostal power to the 144,000. What is the statement in the shepherd's rod? In tract number 3, 1934 edition. Remember, the Pentecost will be poured out on the 3rd month, that is June. Because Pentecost, that is the 50th day from the time when the waveship is offered. And it will always fall on the month of June, 3rd month. So from the time the 144,000 received the Pentecostal power, and of course the blotting out of sins is October 10, then how many months? June, July, August, September, October. So more or less, there are 4 months. But since we are talking about the Pentecostal power that will be poured out in 2023, I think that is, can we see in Bible calendar? Is it June 9? June 9, 2023, Bible calendar. June 2023. Is it Sunday? Is it Sunday? June 9. Okay, it is Sunday. So that is the Pentecost. And in Gregorian calendar, that is November 21. So now, how many days? From June 9. So the one that, the duration time. June 9, that is Bible calendar. June 9, 2023 up to October 10, 2023. You see error? Bible calendar. How many days? 121 days. Now, so, that is very clear, brothers and sisters. So, from November 21, 2021, this is the outpouring of the Holy Ghost to the 144,000. There will be 120 days. 120 days. Then, the sins of the 144,000 will be blotted out. You remember that 120? That is the number who received the Pentecost. Who received the Pentecost in 31 AD. The 120 disciples. So their number is the number of days from the time the 144,000 received the Pentecost to the time by which their sins will be blotted out. There must be 120 days. You see, brothers and sisters? So, this is the blotting out of sins of the 144,000. Therefore, this blotting out of sins is after the slaughtering. Now, let us now study closely, brothers and sisters, the slaughtering. Prior to the blotting out of sins, the slaughtering before the close of provision, and the slaughtering after the close of provision. So, brothers and sisters, we need to study closely, sincerely, and honestly, and we should be open-minded. Now, let's go back to the statement in 12 Symbolic Code, number 3, page 19 and page 20. 12 Symbolic Code, number 3, page 19 and page 20. It says, the judgment of the living on earth commences with Ezekiel 9. But in heaven, in the books, after Ezekiel 9. Now, let us read first the Old Symbolic Code. So, it says here. So, the subject is judgment of the living. According to that reading, the judgment of the living on earth commences with Ezekiel 9, but in heaven, in the books, after Ezekiel 9. Now, let us read here in 1 Symbolic Code 16, page 3. 1 Symbolic Code number 16, page 3. It says, Malachi 3 first applies as a type to the purification of the earthly temple in the days of Christ. John chapter 2 verse 14 and 15. But the direct application finds its fulfillment in the antitype, that is, in the purification of the church when he comes to his earthly temple, church, to purify the sons of Levi, the ministry, the 144,000. After this, he comes for the investigative judgment of the living to his heavenly temple to blot out their sins. So the statement is very plain. The judgment of the living begins first on earth to purify the sons of Levi, to seal the 144,000. And what is the statement? After this, the same with track number 1, that Jesus Christ visits the earth. and when his mission accomplished, returns to heaven. What is his mission? To seal the 144,000, to give them seal of protection as individual, then as a body. And after his mission is accomplished, returns to heaven. And what he will do when he will return to heaven? To blot out their sins. So here in track number 1, page 10, track number 1, page 10, as the chariots mounting up from the earth shows that in this particular throne, God visits the earth, and then when his mission is accomplished, returns to heaven. Track number 1, page 10. So when the mission of Jesus Christ is accomplished, he returns to heaven, bringing the names of the 144,000. What is the purpose of Jesus Christ? That he will return to heaven to blot out their sins, according to one symbolic code, number 16, page 3. Although, brothers and sisters, you will have a hard time to believe, but I will just declare, because this is the absolute fact. March 27, 2021, Jesus Christ was already on the earth. And Jesus Christ will return to heaven on March 22, 2022. Because his mission is accomplished. And in June 9, Bible calendar, 2023, but in Gregorian, it is November 21, 2021. The Pentecostal power will be poured out to the 144,000 living saints. And there are 120 days from the time they receive the Pentecostal power to the time when their sins are blotted out in the third heaven. Their sins are blotted out. So that is the statement. Judgment of the living. What is the judgment of the living? Let me read to you. Investigative judgment of the living. First, track number 3. Page 47 and 48. Inescapably, therefore, the Lord's coming to his temple, Malachi 3, verse 1 to 3. He's coming with all his angels, Matthew 25. And he's coming enthroned above the living creatures, Ezekiel 1. All three representing the same event as has been shown, take place at the beginning of the judgment of the living. The time in which the judicial activities of the heavenly sanctuary extend to the earthly sanctuary, the church. And what time is that? The visitation of Jesus Christ. Let us read 2SR, page 184. It says, the description by Daniel applies to the commencement of the judgment for the dead, but the one by Malachi 3, 1 to 3 is applicable to the judgment for the living. All of the same event, the day of atonement, cleansing of the sanctuary. So there are two visitations of Jesus Christ on this earth. Invisible visitation. The first visitation took place on the Day of Atonement, but the second visitation will be on the Passover week. What is the purpose of the first visitation? To seal the 144,000 living saints. And when after the 144,000 living saints are completely sealed, he will return to the heavenly sanctuary to blot out their sins. What is the purpose of the visitation of Christ in the second visitation? To deliver the 144,000 living saints who are crying day and night for deliverance. Bring them to Mount Zion on the physical, literal premillennial kingdom. And after the 144,000 are delivered, Jesus Christ returns to the heavenly sanctuary to blot out the sins of the great multitude which no man could number. Now, brothers and sisters, let us go back again to the reading in 12 Symbolic Code. 12 Symbolic Code number 3. On page 19 and page 20, it says, the judgment of the living on earth commences with Ezekiel 9. So that is the sealing of the 144,000. But in heaven, in the books after Ezekiel 9. So the blotting out of sins of the 144,000 in the heavenly sanctuary, that is after Ezekiel 9. Then it says, the judgment of the living is in 2 phases. The first phase is a separation that takes away the wicked from among the righteous. Ezekiel 9. Now, brethren, it is very important to study the 2 sections of separation. The first section, it is the wicked that had been taken out. The second section, it is the righteous that had been taken out. But, brothers and sisters, let us distinctly separate the first section of separation, which is investigative, and the first section of separation, which is executive. Now, I would like to repeat again. According to the shepherd's rod, there are 2 sections of separation. I would like to read first. Track number 3. Track number 3, page 68. Note that in the first section of the separation, the one in the church, the wicked are taken away from among the just. The wicked are taken away from among the just. That is the first section of the separation. What is the second section? The righteous are taken away from among the wicked. Now, the first section of separation is divided into 2, investigative and executive. The executive judgment, which is the first section, brothers and sisters, that is the slaughtering. The wicked are taken out. But the investigative judgment, it is not slaughtering. And it is pointing to the triumphant church. Although we will separate that subject. Now, let us go back to the statement. In 12 Symbolic Code number 3, page 19 and page 20. It says, the judgment of the living on earth commences with Ezekiel 9. But in heaven, in the books, after Ezekiel 9. The judgment of the living is in 2 phases. The first phase is a separation that takes away the wicked from among the righteous, Ezekiel 9. The second phase is the bookwork, when the investigation takes place, and when the sins of the righteous and the names of the wicked are blotted out of the records in heaven. This second phase, the judicial session in heaven, is what commences after Ezekiel 9. Now, this is the thing by which the Bijan will have a hard time to explain. And the result, brothers and sisters, they will neglect in reality the most important part in the Shepherd's Rod publications because of this statement. Without first analyzing, first, brothers and sisters, where is that place by which, according to this reading, the second phase is the bookwork, when the investigation takes place, and when the sins of the righteous and the names of the wicked are blotted out of the records in heaven. Where is that place by which the names of the wicked are blotted out of the records in heaven, by which that event takes place after Ezekiel 9? So that is the most important part, brothers and sisters. Yes, it was joined together, the sins of the righteous, then that is in the most holy place. But how about the names of the wicked? Blotted out. Is it in the most holy place? If that is the case, then the names of the wicked had been brought into the most holy place, which is contradictory to the Bible and this prophecy. So to repeat again, the only difference is that when they read this passage, brothers and sisters, that the blotting out of names will take place after Ezekiel 9, by which not only the blotting out of names, but as well as the blotting out of sins. And that is why it is very important to understand the sanctuary construction, because through the sanctuary construction and service is revealed the plan of salvation. Now, let us show to you. Hoping that God would help us. October 22, 1844, it is the third heaven that had been cleansed. Third heaven. The most holy place, most holy place. So the only books that had been remained is the book of Jesus Christ and the book of God the Father. Lamb's book of life sealed with 7 seals. The book of life sealed with 7 seals. So all the books containing the names of the wicked transferred to the second heaven. Holy place. Now, we already declared that in March 27, 2021, up to April 2, 2021. Let us distinctly separate studying these dates. Because if we will go to the dates, then we could no longer explain the events that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary. So, the only books that remain in the second heaven, which is the holy place, first, all the books that had been cleansed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th seal. Now, I would like to say the 7th seal is cleansed on March 27, 2021 to April 2, 2021. All the names of the wicked that had been entered into the 7th seal are blotted out. But it is very important to study who are they that had been entered into the book represented by the 7th seal. And what is the qualification that our names will be inscribed into that book? That is very important. Now, I would like to repeat again. Who are they that have been inscribed into that book? Second, what is the qualification in order for such a one to be inscribed into that book? We will explain that later. Now, all the books by which contain the names of the wicked are transferred to the first heaven. Now, the cleansing, brothers and sisters, the first heaven will never be cleansed because it will be forever there. The names containing the names of the wicked, for example, the names of all the fallen angels, the names of Lucifer, that book will be in the first heaven. It will remain there forever. So, the cleansing of the books is definitely applied to the first heaven, not to the third heaven, not to the second heaven, because the third heaven and the second heaven, it is the sanctuary construction that had been cleansed. It is not the books, because the books are transferred. So the cleansing of the books must be applied to the first heaven. And that cleansing of the books of all the names of the wicked that had been transferred into the first heaven will be completely cleansed after the slaughtering. That is the bookwork in the heavenly sanctuary. Not in the second heaven, not in the third heaven, but it is in the first heaven. Now, I would like to read to you this statement in the Old Symbolic Code. Let's read. 2 Symbolic Code number 11, page 6. 2 Symbolic Code number 11, page 6. It says, when are the tares judged? If the investigative judgment for the living does not begin till after Ezekiel 9, please tell me when the tares in the Seventh-day Adventist Church are judged, for they are living when the sealing message comes. Now, first of all, if we will be saying tares, what book does the tares had been inscribed? The field. It is not the Lamb's Book of Life. Lamb's Book of Life, not sealed with 7 seals. But it is to the book represented by the field. That is why very important to understand the books. Because in the parable of Jesus Christ, the tares is found in the field, not in the net. Because if we will be talking about the net, that is bad fish. So let us distinctly separate the net and the field. But since it is talking about the tares, so it is pointing to the book represented by the field. Because the subject is blotting out. And it is illogical that there is a field in the heavenly sanctuary. Then how does the tares represented into that field? That they will be blotted out or they will be taken out. The only proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary is bookwork. And that's why it says in White House Recruiter, page 20, that heaven's book deal with all aspects of life. Who are they, the tares? Let's read again. Answerer number 2. Page 47. Flood and tares are figurative equivalents. So, what is the representation of the tares? It is also represented by the dragon's flood. Flood and tares are figurative equivalents. And who are they, the dragon's flood? 2TG 2424. 2TG number 24, page 24. It says, finally, what could be the dragon's flood that proceeds out of his mouth, if not dragon-prompted interpreters of the scriptures, through whom he expects to cause the church to be carried away? Who are they, the dragon's flood? Dragon-prompted interpreters. Therefore, those who are in responsible position. Because it is not the members who will interpret the doctrine. And remember in the parable of Jesus Christ, the dragon's blood represented by the tares, sowed by the devil after the heavenly court founder died. By which the movement, which is originally under the direction of God's inspired servant, when God's inspired servant died, the movement became under the direction of God, of uninspired man. So, when we'll be talking about the tares, brothers and sisters, it is even more directly to those who are in the leadership. The false leadership, the leadership that came to that office because of favorable opportunity. And according to 1SR Packet Edition, page 63, it says, it is called carnal ministry, who came to that office only in favorable opportunity. What is that favorable opportunity? When the heavenly court founder died, they immediately came to the front. Some of them claimed to be inspired, some of them were not. But the fact is, they were uninspired men. Now let us read the statement here in 2 Symbolic Code number 11, page 6. Answer. So this is the answer given by B.T. Hodder. We have no special light on this question. So it is not as clear to B.T. Hodder. It says, we have no special light on this question, other than that the judgment of the living begins after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. You see, that is the judgment of the living in the heavenly sanctuary. That is very plain. It says that the judgment of the living begins after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. And if the tares must be judged in the period of the dead, then they must be judged, their names blotted out after the slaughter and just before the commencement of the judgment of the living saints. So that statement is very plain. Now, I would like to show to you. Therefore, that blotting out of names is already in the first heaven. Not in the second heaven. Because in the second heaven, this must be cleansed first before the slaughtering. But that blotting out of names is after the slaughtering. So, brothers and sisters, the blotting out of names mentioned there is the books that is in the first heaven. So the cleansing of the books is more definitely applied to the first heaven than to the third and second heaven. Because the cleansing in the third heaven and the cleansing in the second heaven is the sanctuary itself, the sanctuary construction. It needs to be cleansed. But here, this sanctuary will not be cleansed, but only the books. And that books, all will be cleansed after the slaughtering. But this sanctuary in the second heaven, it must be cleansed before the slaughtering. And according to the reading, we read in 2 Symbolic Code, number 11, page 6, that cleansing in the first heaven, the cleansing of the books, takes place during the judgment that pertains to the dead. Where? In the third heaven. What judgment? Closing work of the judgment of the dead. What is the closing work? Inscribing the names of the righteous under this altar to the special resurrection, Daniel 12:2. So the blotting out of names of these books, by which the names of the wicked will be blotted out in the first heaven, that is during the period of the closing work of the judgment of the dead, which is the granting of rewards. Now, let us read again the statement. Let us read the statement given by the shepherd's rod. It says here, to symbolic code number 11, page 6. We have no special light on this question other than that the judgment of the living begins after the slaughter of Ezekiel 9. And if the tares must be judged in the period of the dead, when they will be judged? The tares. In the period of the dead, then they must be judged, their names blotted out. Who are they? The tares. What book? The field. And where it is placed? In the first heaven. After the slaughter. So the statement in 13 symbolic code, let us read again. The statement in 12 symbolic code number 3, page 20, to harmonize the statement here in 2 symbolic code 11, page 6, it says, the first phase is a separation that takes away the wicked from among the righteous, Ezekiel 9. The second phase is the bookwork, when the investigation takes place, and when the sins of the righteous and the names of the wicked are blotted out in the records of heaven. Did not take place this same day. If you will harmonize 2 symbolic code 11:6, because it says, their names are blotted out just before the commencement of the judgment of the living saints. What is the commencement of the judgment of the living saints in the most holy place? Blotting out of sins. Both of them, the final blotting out of names in the books, which is in the first heaven, both of them will take place after the slaughtering. What is slaughtering? The slaughtering prior to the close of provision. But not the same period of time. According to this reading into symbolic code 11:6, the blotting out of names precede the blotting out of sins of the 144,000. Although both of them takes place in the heavenly sanctuary after the slaughtering. The blotting out of names of all the tares represented by the tares, and such blotting out of names is in the first heaven, because the second heaven was completely cleansed on March 27, 2021, and the only books that had been remained are all clean books. The same in the third heaven. All the books that remain in the third heaven are all clean books. But the first heaven, it is even more directly applied to say cleansing of the books, because the sanctuary will never be cleansed, because the book by which the names of the wicked will be there forever. Brothers and sisters, because if that books will be taken from the first heaven, then where it will be placed? And that is the basis of the proceedings during millennium. That books that had been placed in the first heaven, the basis of the entire proceedings within 1,000 years. So, we will continue to our subject, brothers and sisters, and hoping that at least there's something that you learn and you grasp the reality and the importance of the proceedings that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary, third heaven, second heaven, first heaven, and as well as the earthly sanctuary. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.